Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Raptors Weekly for the week of March the 16th, 2015. I am your fill-in host, William Liu. Fearless leader Zarar is down with the sickness. He has bronchitis. Get well, Zarar. And the podcast really misses you and your swearing. To help me with the podcast today, we have Andrew and Sean Woodley from Raptors HQ. How are you guys?
Not bad. Thanks for having me on.
Andrew?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you, sir.
Oh, good. That's good. On today's program, we're going to have three segments as usual. In the first segment, we're going to recap the two games that happened this week. Unfortunately, programming note, we're recording this before Trailblazers game. So I guess that one's just going to get lost in the shuffle. So I guess we'll recap Heat Spurs. We will talk about if the Raptors are snapping out of their funk. DeRozan and Lowry are playing much better of late. That's the first segment. In the second segment, we're going to talk about the Raptors' easy schedule that remains. We're going to talk about a quick thing on playoff matchups and which one the Raptors should hopefully get. That will be very short. We will definitely have more playoff coverage as the season rolls on. And then we're going to talk about end games surrounding Amir Johnson and the Raptors. Eric Corrine wrote a great piece earlier this week, sort of reading the tea leaves on what looks to be an inevitable split between the Raptors and Amir Johnson after 6 beautiful, beautiful years together. And then the third segment, really quickly, we're just going to preview the 4 games upcoming week. So let's start with this past week. The Raptors lost to the Spurs on Tuesday, rather embarrassingly. Do you guys have any thoughts on that game?
I tuned in. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I watched that game, and it was an ugly first half for sure. It's one of the uglier halves they've played all year. But the second half, it showed a lot of signs, I thought, that something was going to turn around. It was kind of a lot like the first half of the Oklahoma City game where the Raptors offense looked really good and Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan were playing pretty well. And it looked like sources were pointing to a win coming on Friday against the Heat. I mean, the first half was horrendous, but it's the Spurs, and I think you kind of expect something like that against them. And they sort of solved the rebounding problems. They were totally out-rebounded by like 40 in the previous 2 games against Charlotte and Oklahoma City. And I mean, they out-rebounded San Antonio by 1. And I mean, it's not crazy, but it's good to see.
Andrew?
Yeah, I tuned in this game. I had taped it so I could watch the whole thing out after I finished work. And I checked at halftime. I finished work and went to start the game, and everyone was just jumping off a cliff on Twitter. So I just decided to skip the first half entirely because it looked like it was just like a monkey poop fight of a basketball game. And the second half of the game turned out to be pretty good. That's all I saw, and it seemed like they played well enough at least.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's definitely a tale of two halves. In the first half, I think after the first quarter, the Spurs led by 11, and I think they shot like 30%. And it's only because Kawhi Leonard himself got like 5 offensive rebounds. And like Sean was saying, like rebounding was a big issue in the first half. But in the second half, they really did seem to turn it around. Now, the Spurs led by like more than 20 going into the second half, so maybe they just took their foot off the gas pedal. But yeah, it's nice to see that the Raptors had a bit of fight. I mean, overall, it wasn't really that close when it came down to the fourth quarter because Pop put in the big 3, his closing time lineup, and then the Raptors kind of just got, pushed to the side because the Raptors are not on Spurs level, newsflash. So it was a little bit sad the Raptors' comeback fell short, but it's still good they made a comeback because on Friday, the Raptors went home and took on the Miami Heat and won 102-92. I watched most of this game. It was definitely promising to see a whole bunch of players like Lowry and DeRozan sort of play really well after sort of a pretty bad month for both those players. Sean, I don't know what you saw from the game, but please elucidate us.
Actually didn't see the game.
Oh, good.
But, I mean, I'm not entirely surprised. Like I said, I mean, we saw Kyle Lowry on Wednesday or Tuesday when they played the Spurs, and I'm not surprised that carried over. And just looking at the box score for that game, it just seems like a typical Raptors game that they were winning early in the season, where Lowry put up a pretty good stat line all across the board, 19, 8, and 8 with 6 steals. And DeMar, he wasn't shooting well, but he got to the line 13 times, hitting 12 of them. So it just seemed like the regular formula for a Raptors win, even without shooters in the lineup. So yeah, I mean, I didn't see it, so I can't really break it down too much, but I'm not entirely surprised.
All right, Andrew, please tell me you saw the game.
Yeah. So,
yes.
So, this week watching these two games sort of brought down the way I've looked at this team is that I think they're pulling a lot of their emotional play out of their defensive identity. And the problem with that is when you see them play a team like the Spurs, this team with the way they trap so aggressively on the sides and the way they deal with the pick and roll on the side to side. If you are a team that can move the ball really well, if you have patience, you will almost always get an open shot against the Raptors 19 to 20 seconds into a shot clock. And that's been killing them. When they play a team like San Antonio, that means that they're down by 20 and a half. When they play a team like Miami, who just does not move the ball well, it allows their defense, which is really designed for more of a ball sticking offense, to guard more of an offense like that, more of an offense that you were seeing 5 or 6 years ago. They get a lot of swagger events. They actually are able to create turnovers. And that's where they pull a lot of their energy from and where they start feeling like that's why we saw them playing with confidence, I think, and then more aggression offensively instead of more tension offensively. And for a team that needs to really shoot very well in order to be efficient in their offense, they have to have that confidence and that swagger. So I guess the moral of that story is as long as we play teams that aren't that good, we'll be great.
Wise words for sure. I want to go back to the turnovers point. The Heat committed 20 turnovers. And as we know, the Raptors defense is sort of a more swarming, double the ball all times, try to generate pressure. And really, quite frankly, it really hasn't worked very well for the Raptors of late. But it's a promising sign that they were able to turn over the Heat 20 times. And one more thing, ball movement. So the Raptors recorded 26 assists in a game against the Heat. Wasn't so great. But the game before that in Oklahoma City, they had 18 assists in the first half. I went back and looked through the SportView numbers for the Raptors game against the Heat, and they made 340 passes as compared to 282, which is what they averaged in the season. It's obviously a huge jump.
Yeah.
Would you guys agree that the ball is moving better?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Oklahoma City first half was the best example of that lately. I mean, I can remember a couple plays. There was one in particular where Terrence Ross kind of drove in from the right side and then kicked it out to DeRozan at the top, and then DeRozan kicked it out to Lowry at the wing, and then Ross leaked into the corner and got the corner three out of it. And that was the kind of ball movement. Like, I saw that play and I was like, I haven't seen that in months from this team. So I think seeing plays like that definitely is encouraging, and I think starting to get back to what they were at the start of the year a little bit more, where they're not really trying to play the hero ball all the time.
Yeah, we saw it in the Spurs game as well. Trying to come back late, there was a couple times where the Raptors were working the ball all the way around from a driving kick back out to the strong side and then circling it all the way around the weak side corner, which is sort of a play you see very regularly from good teams right now that we haven't seen from the Raptors in a long time, that this week all of a sudden we started seeing happening with regularity, and surprise, surprise, it led to very, very open jump shots.
Yeah. And I just want to add that, like, Terrence Ross is, oddly enough, a very important figure in all of this, because when he plays, especially with the starters, they have specific sets to run to find Terrence open for threes. Like Sean was describing earlier, the play where DeRozan draws a double team, kicks it out to Lowry, defense closes in, and then he swings it to Ross, or like pin downs or whatever. Those spot up options are plays in the playbook that basically are only executable by Ross and to some small extent Lowry. The Raptors don't really have a great spot up 3-point shooting threat except for Ross, and when he's not on the floor, we'll just kind of just don't run it. But it's good to see that they're going to that play when he's on, and it's even better to see that Ross is actually hitting a couple threes now instead of just looking like barely an NBA player. But yeah, I think the two names that were mentioned repeatedly in the Heat Spurs little recap here that we did were DeRozan and Lowry. And both of them have been playing better of late, at least in the box score. DeRozan in the last 5 games is averaging 25.5 points, 4.2 rebounds, and 4.5 assists on 48% shooting, and about 6 trips to the line per game. And Lowry, since his returning from his 2-game rest, is averaging 22.5 points, 4.8 rebounds, 5.8 assists on 53% shooting from deep. So what would you say is the reason behind their improved play of late, Sean?
I mean, for Lowry, I think it's pretty clear. I think the rest did wonders for him. I mean, you look at the 10 games before he took the break, he was averaging 12, 5 assists and 3 rebounds and shooting 24% from 3. He was minus 6.6 net rating overall over those 10 games, and it was just ugly. And I mean, he obviously was dealing with some things. I think his hand was obviously bothering him, and that screwed up his shot. So I think that's the reason for it. I mean, he's back to sort of what he was when he was healthy at the start of the year and carrying the team.
Yeah, Lowry's a lot more comfortable moving around, and I think that DeMar has stepped back a little bit from trying to take the consideration that any shot he takes is a good shot. He's not putting on quite as many shots. He's still taking some bad ones, but he's at least looking to pass a little bit more now. He's not, laser focused on shooting himself out of a slump, and he's more interested in playing team basketball, which opens up everything.
Right. I think that ties back to the ball movement thing as well. Yeah, it's very promising that they turn it around. Okay, so we're just going to take a quick break to hear that weird plucky music that we put in between the segments. And we'll be back in segment 2. We'll talk about the schedule, playoff matchups, and Amir Johnson. Okay, so welcome back to segment 2 of the Raptors Weekly Podcast. Again, this is without Zarar, so get well soon, Zarar. Stop being down with the sickness. I gotta stop making that joke. It's the one joke I wrote for this podcast. All right, so we're gonna talk about the easy schedule. I've done some cursory research. The Raptors have that easy schedule by Basketball Reference's SRS metric, but Sean has dutifully done more research than me, so Sean, tell us.
Yeah, I mean, so after tonight's game against Portland, the final 16 games, there's only 3 games against teams that are above 500. There's 2 against Chicago, 1 this week coming up, and then there's 1 against Houston. And so far this year against teams under 500, they're 24-7. So that's exciting to begin with. In terms of percentage overall, the win percentage that they're up against with their opponents for the last 16 games is about 410 compared to almost 570 in the 16 games that preceded that. And there's an 8 home game, 9 away split for the rest of the way. And they had 9 of the previous 12 games are on the road. So it's definitely lightening up. And when you look at how hard their schedule was over the last little while, I mean, sure, there are losses mixed in there to the Knicks against without Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday. It's not really surprising that they came out the way they did with the amount of hard teams they were playing on the road. So yeah, I think the rest of the way, it looks pretty good, and Raptors fans should be at least a little bit excited to regain some of their November form.
Mm-hmm. Wait, so just a quick question on that.
Yeah.
You asked me this earlier for your podcast earlier this week. Do you think that the easy schedule is a thing for the Raptors, or would you kind of want them to be tested? Because I'm of more of the opinion that just a couple easy games is good. You get the team's confidence back. You get some rest for your key players, hopefully, if there are some blowout wins in the fourth quarter and stuff. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'm of the opinion that I want the team to be sharp and not get playing habits that might work against easier teams like the Celtics or the Sixers, but might not work against a playoff team. So where do you stand on that? Do you want the Raptors to be tested?
I'm kind of the opposite mind.
Okay.
I think the way they've struggled lately, I think an easy schedule down the stretch will just, it's simplistic, but it'll give them some confidence going into the playoffs, which I think is huge. I also think it'll help them work out a solid rotation where they don't have to, slot Patrick Patterson up to guard Draymond Green for some reason. Hopefully they can sort of just find a set rotation that they're going to go into the playoffs with instead of having to switch it around based on who they're playing. And I think if they can rack up a few wins in the first little bit of this stretch, it gives them more opportunity to rest guys like Lowry and DeRozan before the playoffs. I think more rest for Lowry would definitely be good if you can get it at some point. And I think the chance to secure home court, with Washington right there on the rails with the 3rd, 4th, 5th race kind of there, I think gaining home court advantage against Washington would be huge if that's the series they end up getting. And I think with Washington's schedule down the stretch, they have Portland, the Clippers, Golden State, Houston, Memphis, Cleveland, and Atlanta all down the stretch. So I think these easy wins will help the Raptors put some distance between them and the Wizards heading into the playoffs and give them home court, which I think will be super important.
Mm-hmm. Andrew?
I think it's given how much of the Raptors struggle has been mental, a mental issue, and how much of it has been key guys, Lowry and DeMar, struggling with their confidence, and especially someone like Terrence Ross struggling with his confidence, seeming to maybe have found some of it now. I think that this team has played together as a unit for 2 whole years now, they're going to be able to. I think they're going to be able to get their focus into the playoffs. They've been to the playoffs before. Getting there, they're going to be able to lock down and know what they want to do. But if they can get there with some confidence and feeling good about themselves, then I think that mental edge is important than, playing someone who's going to keep you on your toes. Because I think that these guys know how to bring their game up once they get to the playoffs. And I think that the up and down season they had have made them realize I don't think they're going to be too big for the bridges. They are a limited team that needs to play to their full capacity to accomplish something.
Yeah, I guess my only concern is last season when they played in the playoffs, the first game they really seemed like they were shell shocked. Now maybe that's just a case of a really young team playing in the playoffs together for the first time, but it would have been nice if the Raptors could have just like started the playoffs, with a full head team basically. But like you guys said, like getting a giant win streak based on super easy teams could also do wonders for the team's confidence. So. That leads me nicely to the next topic, which is ideal playoff matchups. So we're just going to throw out a team, and then sort of two quick reasons why that team would be an ideal matchup for the Raptors. So Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, I picked the Washington Wizards. Not really for any super in-depth reasons, but I mean, you look over the last 2 years, they're 6-1 against them or something like that. They've won close games. They've won blowouts against them. They seem to have the Wizards' number. And the bigger reason is right now, want to catch up to the Raptors and Chicago for home court in the first round. And John Wall has pretty much stated that, a lot like Kyle Lowry, he's been battling some issues and he's clearly not 100%. And with the Wizards trying to chase down home court in the playoffs, they might not have the ability to rest him down the stretch. So if you can get a John Wall who's even less of what he is right now in the first round against a team that you've dominated over the last couple of years, I think that's pretty good. Plus, Randy Whitman seems to be sort of imploding. So, I mean, I think it'd be a pretty fair matchup.
I think this is just Randy Whitman's final form. Like he's kind of been some version of this for a long time.
Randy Whitman's been imploding for decades.
Yeah, that picture of the ball hitting his face. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
It was a really big week for pictures and videos of balls hitting people's faces. But...
Yeah, guys, please go on the internet, search for balls hitting face. It's gonna be great.
Safe search on
or off.
Basketballs hitting faces.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the Wizards. I think a pretty. I want to say matchup because it's weird. It's. I think on the whole, the Wizards and the Raptors are like two sort of relatively equivalent teams. They both have very fatal flaws. For the Wizards, it's the fact that their offense is just pretty bad, either by system or just by raw talent itself. And for the Raptors, obviously, we have defensive issues. But at the same time, it comes down to matchups. And like Sean said, like the Raptors are 6-1 against the Wizards over the last 2 years. They just basically beat them in every type of scenario. So I don't think anyone would feel unconfident playing the Wizards in the first round. But Andrew and I have a differing opinion. I think we are both going to go with the Milwaukee Bucks as an ideal matchup. So Andrew, list your reasons.
I'm still I would be a little nervous about the Wizards. I think they're certainly struggling. I mean, the game against Memphis where they played against the Grizzlies and disrespected was the first time they'd beat a winning team since.
Whoa, hold on. But did Matt Moore tweet about this?
Yeah. It might have come up.
Was Tony Allen sick again? Because the whole world needs to know that Tony Allen was sick. Yeah, right? And Costa Koufos, did he play? He's basically, I don't actually know what his nationality is, but European Shaq, right? You
Greek Shaq?
Sorry. Greek? Is he Greek?
He's Greek.
Costa Koufos?
Yeah, I guess that would make sense. Yeah. All right, sorry. Weird time to throw shade at Matt Moore, but Andrew, go ahead.
Speaking of Greek players, the Greek Freak is really the centerpiece of Milwaukee, and that's one reason why I would love to play them in the playoffs because they're they're very long, they're interesting to play, they really focus on defense, and they play hard. But this is a team that is it's a less talented version of last year's Raptors team, which overachieved in defense and really plays hard and is going to get to the playoffs and have what I think would be a complete inability to score in the half court. I don't see how a team that's led a point guard by Michael Carter-Williams and Jared Bayless is going to get through the first round of a playoff matchup without a go-to scorer. It's not there. I think they're really interesting. I think they've done some great things, and they do play very well defensively, but when they start playing a playoff style game and they start losing all their fast break points, I think that they're going to fall deeply behind teams.
Yeah. I mean, I agree, basically. It's the same thing. Don't get me wrong, the Bucks are really good, and there's actually a lot of good reasons why the Bucks would be a particularly terrible matchup for the Raptors. Mostly, they could stick a whole bunch of like long wing defenders on Rosen, which would really cut down his effectiveness. But at the same time, the Bucks really can't score, especially now that Brandon Knight's gone. I guess they have two floor spacing threats, but they have Chris Middleton, who has played really well of late, and he's a dead-eye shooter. And but at the same time, like, it's not like Chris Middleton's going to win you like 3 or 4 games in a playoff series, right? It's ultimately Chris Middleton and Ersan Ilyasova, who's, occasionally he can shoot the 3, occasionally sometimes he can't. He's a bit of a Raptor killer. But I mean, on the whole, the Bucks just really don't have much scoring ability. The Raptors can really afford to just sit back, pack the paint, play a slow half-court game. And as long as the Raptors can keep their turnovers down, which is easier said than done with the Bucks, who have a lot of long defenders. They like to pressure the ball. It might be hard to find passing lanes and things like that. As long as the Raptors can keep their turnovers down, the Bucks really shouldn't have enough offense to win 3 or 4 games. So, yeah, definitely. But also the Wizards are a pretty tantalizing matchup as well. I think the Wizards will be the more fun one to watch. I think Raptors-Bucks would almost certainly be on NBA TV, whereas Raptors-Wizards, there's a bit more national appeal, and it's sort of a fun matchup between two teams on the rise. So, yeah, we'll definitely talk about the playoffs a little bit more as the season moves closer to the playoffs itself.
But here's a question. Raptors, Wizards first round, you guys seem really confident. Like, that's a matchup you would like to have. Do you think that the mainstream sports media what do you think the majority of picks are going to be on Raptors versus Wizards when the coverage would happen for that series? Because as confident as you guys sound, I don't think that the majority of guys on TV would take the Raptors to win that series. I'm not trying to be like we don't get respect kind of guy. There seems.
What do you mean by like national TV?
Sorry,
do you mean like the American?
Yeah, American TV.
Okay,
that's a good question. I don't think it'd be as drastic a difference. Like, it wouldn't be like last year where everyone was picking Brooklyn over Toronto. I think it'd be a pretty even split. I think it really depends, though, on how they finish the season out. If the Wiz keep playing the way they have, and I mentioned they're a pretty tough schedule coming up, and they sort of limp into the playoffs, and the Raptors kind of cruise a hot streak into the playoffs, I think that could sway sort of like a 60-40 split in terms of the Raptors. But yeah, I still think a lot of people would take the Wiz because John Wall and the star power he has.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those things where, like, they'll preview the matchup and sort of a lot of the evidence will be in support of the Raptors, their record and stuff. But then there's always going to be this one analyst that says, but, since they're two such close teams, give me the Wizards because they got more playoff experience. You got veterans there like Nene and Gortat, and they could just dominate in the post. My voice is getting deeper because I'm trying to emulate Shaq. It's not working.
Shaq, that's terrible.
But you go real deep for that one.
Bobby Diggin.
Oh, jeez.
Earn it. Tell Shaq he's stupid.
Yeah, I'll beat you. Championship rings. I don't know. Anyway, I hit free throws when it counted. Wow, this podcast is off the rails. Yeah, no, I just think that some national analysts will pick the Wizards just on the basis of having a more veteran, having. Quite frankly, I'd say better bigs, but at the same time, the Raptors bigs are really well against Wizards, and the Wizards also have a tendency of benching their bigs down the stretch. So the only guy there I'm afraid of is Paul Pierce, who is a straight-up killer. Yep. And until he retires for good, I will continue to be terrified of Paul Pierce in the past. Okay, and one more question, segment topic. So earlier this week, or I guess last week, Eric Corrine of the National Post wrote an article about Amir Johnson and sort of his end game with the Raptors. Amir has obviously not been himself this season. He's been really injury prone and sort of playing through it, which isn't great, but at the same time, he's been less effective. And with his contract coming to a close, it seems like the Raptors may move in a different direction with Amir Johnson and might end their 6-year relationship together, which single tier for that. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think Amir Johnson is coming back this offseason? And if so, in what capacity in terms of contract and also role on the team? So, Sean?
I don't think a lot of the reasons I laid out. And I don't think it's a good idea to bring him back if you're the Raptors. He's 27, but he's 10 years into his career. And if you look at his per 36 numbers over the last 3 years, they've really started dropping. Yards around the league down. His yards are down. So I don't see the point in paying him a lot of money. And I mean, the money he's going to command with the cap going up and everything, it's kind of hard to find a comp for him. But if you look at the $7 million he makes this year, going into what's probably going to be his last big contract, he's probably going to want something like Taj Gibson money, which is he makes 8.25 a year. I think he could get anywhere between 8 and 10 on the open market, and I don't think it's smart of the Raptors to bring a guy back on that deal when he's a depreciating asset. And if they let him walk and they let Lou Williams walk, they could have $1 million plus in cap space. And plus their first round picks and that Knicks pick. So, I mean, who knows what they could try to do with that. I just think it gives them more flexibility to let him walk, and they won't be locked into a guy who is probably past the prime of his career.
His play the last year and a half has really, really dropped off just as a result of what he's been physically unable to do. Defensively, 2 years ago and 3 years ago, he was the best defender we had, and it wasn't close. His help defense and the timing that he had really covered up for a lot of problems where we had the big man that he was playing with. And he's played through injuries this year, and he's been effective in what he's been doing. But what he's really been completely unable to do is fix holes on defense the way that he used to. Whether that's because this is a guy who's, he's coming up on 13,000 minutes played, even though he's only 27, and he's played through all these injuries like that. His body plays a lot older than it actually is. I think they're less inclined to sign him and bring him back because of that. But I think that, for Amir, I think he's going to have a hard time getting the kind of contract that he wants to get as well. I'm not sure what team who needs him to be sort of a piece or one of the last pieces towards moving to be a contender who would be willing to spend that kind of money on him, willing to do that, or is going to look at the stats and think that's a smart decision to make. I think that he might end up finding that he has to take something like a 1-year deal to try to prove that he is healthy next year. Because if he can get completely healthy, then he can show a ceiling that he hasn't demonstrated in about 18 months now. But it's going to be too bad to see him go. I think we might, but I think that could really change things where if he can't get the deal that he wants, he can come back for less than he was expecting, or he might just try to go whoever will give him the most minutes for 1 year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's an awkward thing with Amir because like you guys have said, he has struggled this season, just being healthy and stuff. But with the Raptors primed to make a big ad or in the offseason, it really does seem like Amir Johnson doesn't really have a great chance of coming back as the starting and sort of reprising his starting power forward gig, unless he somehow magically gets healthy. I don't know if he needs surgery in his ankles or something that he's just been putting off. But even in that case, I don't think Raptors fans would feel too confident about Amir Johnson getting back and reprising the role of, full-time starting power forward. That'd be great to have him coming off the bench. Don't get me wrong, but we already have Patrick Patterson off the bench, and I don't know how much money you really want to spend on a bench that's already becoming pretty expensive, especially if you bring back Lou Williams, which is going to cost at least $7-8 million a year. Then you're talking about $7 million for Lou Will. You're talking about 6.5 for Gravis. You're talking about 6 for Patrick Patterson. That's a really insanely expensive bench to add Amir. So, the Raptors kind of got him a bigger than usual, market value deal when they signed him back in 2010. If you guys remember, he was averaging 6.2 points and 5 rebounds a game, and he played 20 minutes a game, and Colangelo gave him that big deal.
When he signed that contract, his per 36 minutes fouls were 7.7.
Yeah, exactly. And I think 2 seasons ago, he led the league in total fouls in the entire league. But maybe he pays us back a little bit. I don't know. I'm hoping the Raptors do the under the table Dallas Mavericks thing where they're just hey, you're going to sign this terrible deal for you, but in the future, you can come back and work in MLSE as vice president or assistant coach
Drake's
or whatever. Drake's hype man, yeah. You could be on the street handing out views from the six in this yeyear, right? So,
he did play his way into that contract though. That contract was not a massive.
Oh, for sure, yeah. It was worth it. Ultimately, paid off for sure. I think the Raptors got pretty good value off that contract, but at the same time, when he signed it, it seemed like an overpay,
yeah.
Right?
If there's one thing I'd add, it's that if you're looking at the Raptors and where they can improve, the power forward spot seems like the most reasonable because it's hard to envision another star wing player playing along with DeRozan and Lowry and making that work because they're so dependent on the ball. it's just hard to find a place to improve the team if Amir is occupying that starting spot or if he's occupying a lot of money on your cap to be a bench player. So again, I love Amir Johnson. He's been awesome for the Raptors for a long time now, but I'm on board with him walking if they can bring in a guy. I mean, who knows? Maybe they can offer a max deal to Draymond Green or something, and then I think everyone becomes okay with that if Amir Johnson leaves.
Personally, I wouldn't offer Draymond Green max deal just because it seems like he's one of those like situational guys.
That just might be what it takes to get him, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think the Pistons are gonna throw a max deal at Draymond, and I think Draymond actually wants to return home. He's one of those like super loyal Michigan guys. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, it seems like this is likely the end with Amir Johnson. I guess we'll find out in the offseason. Hopefully, he takes a discount and comes back 3, 4, or 5 million. Again, that's really hopeful, wishful thinking. But if you come back, at least play backup center. I don't think anyone have an issue with that, right?
Not at all, nope.
Anyway, this wraps up segment 2, and we're going to come back in segment 3 with a preview of next week's games. Okay, welcome back for segment 3. The Raptors have 4 games this week. Starting with the Indiana Pacers. They are on the road. This is on Monday. The Raptors will be traveling on the second end of a back-to-back. The Pacers are really hot of late. They just lost on Saturday, but they are 13-3 over the last 16 games. Sean, what do you think about this game?
I am terrified of the Pacers. I think it's a big game for the Raptors because the Pacers are sort of gaining on Milwaukee. They're only 2.5 or 3.5 games back of them at this point. And there's a chance if they keep playing the way they're playing that they'll squeeze into a 6th spot and maybe match up with the Raptors in the first round, which I think would be just brutal for the Raptors. And I think it's a massive game for the Raptors to try to get on a roll here after their win against Miami.
Mm-hmm. Andrew?
I mean, George Hill's been really, really good since he came back for them. There was an article that came out last week where Paul George said, amidst the speculation that Paul George could come back from the playoffs, Paul George was saying that he was worried about maybe he shouldn't come back because he doesn't want to mess with the team's chemistry. Whenever you have someone like Paul George saying he maybe shouldn't come back because Rodney Stuckey is just doing too good of a job in that role, I don't know what Frank Vogel does to get those guys on board, but damn it, he's doing one hell of a job. Having said that, I will never fear Rodney Stuckey, so I think they can take this game.
You don't fear 50 Cent lookalike Rodney Stuckey, who's averaging, I might add, 25-5 for the last 8 games.
Yeah, he's played great, but Rodney Stuckey is not a guy who relies on getting good shots to get his buckets. He's a guy who relies on hitting tough shots, and I just don't think that he's good enough to do that consistently enough to make the numbers he's had lately be a real thing.
That sounds like someone we know. No. DeRozan is definitely better than Rodney Stuckey. But,
he's Rodney Stuckey with free throws.
Right, that's a good point. Yeah, this is going to be a really tough game for sure. Playing in Indiana is going to be tough as well. They're mostly at full health. Obviously, Paul George is not back yet, but they really seem to have found their stride. And yeah, this will be interesting because, like Sean said, this could be a potential playoff matchup. It's a little bit unlikely, but who knows? And it's fun to see Jonas play against Roy Hibbert. They're both doing the verticality thing. So expect not that many up blocks and a lot of just jumping straight up. So do we have a prediction for this game?
I think the Raptors will drop it. Not happy to say it, but I think they're going to lose.
Andrew?
And the Raptors will take it.
I agree with Andrew. Woo! I think the Raptors are hot right now, pending what happens in the Portland game because we still don't know. Okay, so that's that. On Wednesday, the Raptors return home to face Andrew Wiggins. Oh my God, Captain Canada comes home. What do you guys think of the game? I think we all think this is going to be a win, right? But
yeah, I think they're going to win it. I'm excited because I'm going to this game, and I'm really pumped to see Ricky Rubio and Andrew Wiggins on the floor. The Wolves are sort of sneaky competent, though. Since Rubio and Pekovic got healthy and since Garnett came, that starting lineup of Rubio, Kevin Martin, Wiggins, Garnett, and Pekovic is sort of good. And they've only played 50 minutes together, but they're almost a plus 12 overall. And but I mean, their bench it really, really falls off, especially with Shabazz Muhammad over the year and all that. But no, they're not winning games, but they're better than I think their record shows right now.
Andrew?
Yeah, two things to watch in person at this game, Sean. A, like it's going to be great to see Wiggins, but B, the thing I want you to look for, hopefully your seats are okay, is if you think Pekovic's head looks big on TV, if you can see that thing even 50 to 60 feet away in person, it will just flabbergast you. He has the biggest human head I've ever seen in my life.
I'm up in the upper bowl, so it might be. I mean, if it's as big as you say it is, I'll probably still be able to make it out.
It will look small.
Well, as someone who has a giant head, that's reassuring that there are more of us out there. Although Pekovic is like a 7-foot Sasquatch.
Game of Thrones character.
Huge. Yes, definitely. An extra in Game of Thrones for sure. I think the Raptors should take this one. I mean, it should be really exciting. I hope Drake's courtside and does a cover of, or he performs Draft Day, A. Wiggins. At half court during halftime, but that's never happened, especially not on a Wednesday with Minnesota down. So yeah, I think the Raptors should win. Ricky Rubio tweaked his ankle again, so I don't know if he's going to play. If he does, he's a tremendous player. Big fan of Ricky Rubio. It should be exciting, but ultimately I think the Raptors take this one. And after that, the Raptors travel once again to face the Chicago Bulls on Friday. I mean, the Bulls are super banged up. There's no Derrick Rose, there's no Jimmy Butler, there's no Taj Gibson, most likely. And you never know what the Bulls are playing this season. Joakim Noah might be injured by Friday. You just never know. I mean, it's going to be tough. So, Sean, what do you think?
I think this is a game they can take, the Raptors, given they're healthy. And I think it's an important game to take, too, because as you mentioned, we're talking about the schedule. There aren't that many games against good teams where they can try to hone in on how to beat good teams. And this is one of them. And I think they take it. I mean, the Bulls are tough and they've played the Raptors really hard this year. But I feel like this will be the one win out of 4 games against the Bulls this year.
Andrew.
The Bulls match up against our offense just so well. They've just clunk it down, and it's become so it's always frustrating to watch us play the Bulls, just the way that they muck things up. And it looks like we're primed to see a solid 15 minutes of Grievous Vasquez and Heinrich take turns guarding each other, which will be fun for nobody. I think the Raptors drop this game.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry.
Just due to the injuries, I like the Raptors to win this one, because like if the Raptors can't beat the Bulls without Derrick Rose, Jimmy Butler, and Taj Gibson, like what are we even doing here, right? I mean, like we're talking about like Etuan Moore and
Tony Snell, 36 minutes. Tony Snell.
Yeah.
To be fair, Tony Snell's been somewhat decent this year, surprisingly decent. Even guys like McDermott have been all right. Nikola Mirotic has come on really strong, but I think that Jonas and Powell each other pretty well. I mean, I think Powell is kind of dominant to Jonas a couple, but Jonas has also responded pretty strongly of late, and we always have Chuck Hayes if Pau Gasol really goes off. So hope it comes to that, but I mean, given the way that the Bulls are banged up, I think the Raptors can take this one. And then finally on Sunday, the Raptors return home to host the New York Knicks. Langston Galloway is going to be there along with Andrea Bargnani, who will undoubtedly get a 20th anniversary tribute. Brian Colangelo will be there in person to hand him his next contract. So
is it a purple jersey day for that game?
I think
to honor Bargnani?
It's only Friday.
They only wear them on Friday, right?
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
It's too bad.
But expect a lot of promo ads for sure. That's just good marketing right there. I think we all expect the Raptors to beat the Knicks.
If they don't, something's really wrong. Shouldn't be. If you lose twice the Knicks in one season in a month, I mean, you got some serious things to work out.
Andrew.
And every time you watch Bargnani hit, like he's played awful.
Yeah, he's played pretty well.
Just awful.
Whoa. He's put on stats.
He's played awful lately, but he has been able to score, which is not great. You're scoring 16 points a game for the worst team in the league. It's not a real thing to hang your hat on. But every time that if anyone ever busts on a Bargnani pump fake or anything that happens, before you feel bad about yourself, just remember that it's really hard to see the Nuggets sneaking into the playoffs next year, who have the right to swap with New York. And New York is really going to have a hard time making the playoffs. So we're almost definitely getting a lottery pick for that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's honestly still Masai's best move, and I think that was his first move as general manager.
That's the best trade since the Harden trade. I mean, there's a wide difference, but
yes, for sure. Yeah, the Knicks just. Have you guys seen their starting lineup? It's terrible. It's like a whole bunch of 10-day guys that have eventually just had to stick around because their team's so bad.
Lou Amundsen is still playing in the NBA. Lance Thomas. I mean, yeah, it's ugly.
Yeah, Langston Galloway. So like they literally start 3 10-day guys. But I mean, the Raptors lost to the Knicks like 2 weeks ago. So like
anything can happen, I guess.
Anything's possible, as Kim Garnett said. But I think the Raptors are going to win this one. So I guess I'm thinking them to go for 4-0. Sean's got them going 3-1. Andrew's also 3-1. They disagree on the Pacers and the Bulls game. But hey, it looks like the Raptors are going to have a pretty good week. Of course, we have not seen the Portland game yet, so if they get blown out, just put me down as losing all 4 then. That's the type of fan I am. All right. Thank you for on the podcast, guys. Andrew and Sean, this is great. Hopefully I won't have to do any more of these hosting gigs because Zarar will no longer be sick with bronchitis. Get well soon, Zarar. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks a lot, Will.